So welcome back to Switch to Linux. We have our next news topic from the Weekly News Roundup. And today we are going to be talking about, well, after talking about the wonderful Lone Star surveillance state, now we're going to talk about ditching the surveillance state. Because while over here in the United States, we're doing this patchwork of nonsense, creating a surveillance state, it appears as though many people in EU are trying to get around it, even though at the same time, Denmark is trying to force digital IDs on everybody. So, I don't know. But what we have going on over here, and this section, by the way, is a whole lot shorter than the previous one. But over here we have good news for Germany anyway. Germany is moving away from Microsoft Exchange servers and migrating entirely to open source email systems, utilizing some available open source platforms that already exist and utilizing Thunderbird as their mail connector. So EU nations have generally been more progressive in adopting open source solutions for government operations. And honestly, all people need to do this as well. This time, it's their email systems that's undergone complete transformation. The entire state of Schleswig-Holstein, did I say that right? Probably not. Entire state administration email systems switched from Microsoft Exchange and Outlook to Open Exchange and Thunderbird. Bye-bye, Microsoft. They said they migrated 40,000 mailboxes containing 100 million emails and calendar entries were all moved to the new system. And so this is very possible, guys. Think about this. An entire German state did this. How difficult is it going to be for you? Because I got news for you guys. I have not used Google or Microsoft or anybody else to manage my contacts, manage my calendars, manage my emails. Haven't done it. I'm using Nextcloud, and it is not complicated for an average person to set up a Nextcloud instance. I've actually sold Nextcloud instances for people. I would basically manage them. And inside of the Nextcloud instance, you can set up your calendars, your contacts, your photo shares, your documents, everything. Everything you can do with Google or Dropbox or Microsoft, you can do on Nextcloud instance. Now, there's other options if you don't want to go with Nextcloud. There's Proton, which I would trust. And honestly, the cost of Proton is about the same as the cost of the basic paid services from Microsoft or Google. So if you are like, I don't want to get into my own self-hosting stuff, look at Proton as an option. I think Tuda is doing some other stuff beyond just email now. There are a couple of good options. Disroot has some as well. So there are a lot of really good options out there that you do not have to give all of this information to these big tech companies. I use Nextcloud because I control the server, I control the information, I control the access. That's it, period. I own it. And so that really is the important thing to me. But I would highly, highly encourage everybody to look at getting away from those big tech companies. They are not your friends. In addition to that, the Austrian military also just ditched Microsoft. They're ditched Microsoft Windows and they've ditched Office 365. They're replacing it for Linux operating systems and LibreOffice. Again, I'd highly encourage anybody to do that. Of course, this is from ZDNet, which does, you will have to pardon the article author here, who's this Stephen Von Nicholas. My apologies, Stephen Von Nicholas does have a severe case of Trump derangement syndrome. So even though he blames Donald Trump in this article, he does also say that this has been a progress several years in the making. I'm not sure how those two things go together, but people with TDS do have irrational thinking, so that's okay. We'll forgive that part. We'll just look at what's the good parts in the article. Austria's military completed a major IT overhaul, replacing Microsoft Office with the open source LibreOffice suite across its desktop. This affects 16,000 workstations. The move will reduce their software bill at $33.75 per user for, a month for Office 365E for 60,000 workstations at $6.5 million per year, compared to LibreOffice's zero. So now they're switching all of that on over. Of course, if they're going to be using something like a cloud-based interactive with LibreOffice, that would require like a Calibora type server. That actually might cost some extra use cases if they're doing something like that. I'm not, I don't know if they're doing cloud stuff or not. Obviously, Microsoft 365 is cloud, LibreOffice is not. Of course, that might be the thing. They might just want to be avoiding the cloud because the reality is getting out of the cloud is good. The major reason here is to gain digital sovereignty and control over critical data. This has been a plan of the EU for a long time. And so they say here that many EU governments are dumping Microsoft to protect their data because, yeah, the fact of the matter is a lot of these companies are, the United States-based companies are the ones that are housing all of this data. And particularly if you're the military of an organization, you really don't want to be giving all of your documents and information in the hands of somebody that's not your state. Okay. Kind of harmful for that, right? So the French city of Lyons is also moving from Linux, moving from Windows to Linux and LibreOffice to protect the citizens' data. Of course, this is where they say, it's under President Donald Trump, even though they do say down the bottom of the article that this is years in the making. So, Austria's case, the government started to worry about such moves were forthcoming when in 2020, the military identified the risks of depending on external cloud services, particularly from U.S. Austria wasn't the only one. Yeah. And everybody's been talking about some of the dangers. And look at this. Years in the making. Currently, it's because of this. Nobody thought Trump was going to win. They all thought he was going to be in jail. It has nothing to do with Donald Trump. It has entirely to do with EU's plan for digital sovereignty. They've been talking about it for years. All right. Austria's switch highlights a growing trend among European governments to prioritize data independence, open collaboration, and local control of reliance on foreign cloud services. And with that, I 100% agree. I'm an American. I don't want my data in American clouds. Okay. I don't trust the clouds. And it's not Donald Trump. I trust Donald Trump far more than I trust Google or Microsoft. Okay, just saying. And I don't trust any of them. Okay, just to be clear. All right. But then moving into our ditching the surveillance state, of course, with all of these App Store regulations. Now, of course, let me say this briefly about the App Store regulations. I run Graphene OS. I don't have a Google Play Store on here. And since that law requires you to have to create an account, Aurora still exists. And you can download apps on Aurora Store without having a Google account. So by the law, the way this law is written, the Aurora Store, F-Droid, they do not have to comply with that crazy law because you do not create an account in any of those things. And on my Graphene OS phone here, I don't have Google Play services on there. I don't have anything connected to Google, so I am not under that law either. I will be, when I drive through Texas this year after January 1st, I'm going to sit in the middle of Texas and start downloading apps from Aurora. I don't even want any apps from Aurora, but I'm going to do it because I can. But with all that happening, Free Software Foundation has a new president who's been involved in a long time. But one of the things they're targeting right now is creating finally large collaborations behind an actual Linux phone. Of course, we've had a couple of sad stories in the Linux phone department. There's the Pine phone, which the problem with the Pine phone is there's just not enough development going on in the hardware space. So I've played with the Pine phone. I've enjoyed what I've done with the Pine phone, but the hardware is just too crappy. It's not sustainable hardware. The battery dies in 35 minutes of messing with the thing. It barely works, doesn't keep Bluetooth connections. It basically doesn't work super well. Then, of course, we had the purism nonsense, and that turned into a giant crap show all over the place. And so there was that issue. Of course, they were trying to do this Apple approach and do all the hardware and all the software and perfect compatibility. You end up with probably a really good phone that nobody could verify because nobody could get the stupid thing, despite everybody threw a bunch of money at pre-orders and never happened. And then the Pine phone, you had tons of development on the software end, but the hardware lacked so much, it was unsustainable. You just can't get the Pine phones to work. So what they're working at is the Libre phone project announced by Executive Director Zoe Koyman in the afternoon. The new initiative aims to bring complete computing freedom to mobile devices, addressing spaces where users currently have minimal control over their hardware and software, such as Android and iOS. So since mobile phone computing is now so ubiquitous, we're very excited about Libre phone and to think about the potentials of bringing software freedom to more users over the world. I think the biggest problem they're going to have is the hardware development. I think that's where PinePhone came into effect, is especially from the Free Software Foundation, who wants everything to be absolutely free and open source. Sometimes that's really, really hard to do on hardware. And that's one of the biggest challenges they're going to have. And that's some of the things some of the comments have addressed, which is why Libre purism, had a hard time getting off the ground. It's why Pine phones there's just not enough development, and there's not enough people buying the phones to develop the stuff right now. So it's kind of this stuck. It's kind of the reason why Windows Phone failed. Windows Phone was actually, believe it or not, I don't believe I'm saying this. I must check my head, guys. The Windows Phone was an amazing phone. I love the Windows Phone. I had one for a couple years. It was great. I thought the UI was amazing. I thought the hardware was pretty good. It crashed all the time because the software sucked. The store didn't have anything, but you couldn't get the development on the store or the hardware because there wasn't enough need for the phones. And right now we have this 2-tier Android or Apple platform. It's really hard to break into that, but we'll see what they do. I'm hopeful, but I'm not totally sure anything is going to happen. So there are our thoughts on those stories there. Escaping the surveillance state. Free and open source software, guys. Switch to Linux. If you do not have to be using Windows for your regular data stuff, guys, switch to Linux. Switch to Linux, especially with Windows 11 coming out, forcing you to have Microsoft accounts, verifying everything with phone numbers. They want to purely authenticate who you are and automatically store data of copies of all of your data in their own clouds, which gives them access to it under many certain circumstances. Just read their privacy policies. You work on Linux, local accounts, your files stay local, nothing's in the cloud, no verification of who you are. You can use your devices as your own, and that is what you need to do to escape the surveillance state. Let me know your thoughts about that in the comments down below.